Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this week's edition of the Black and Gold Report, a show all about UNC Pembroke athletics, presented by Pepsi. This week on the show, we're going to be previewing all of the fall sports, starting with my interview from last week with head football coach Shane Richardson. And on the second half of the show, we're going to be talking with both men's and women's soccer coaches, as well as volleyball and cross-country head coach. But first, here's my interview with head football coach Shane Richardson. We haven't gotten the chance to talk to you since spring workouts commenced, but what did you take away from spring ball, and what were some of the questions that were answered about your program during the spring?
Yeah, we had an interesting spring, obviously, with the transition taking place, and so we were able to implement pretty much our new offensive system and coaches, and really me taking over as head coach, we were able to kind of start building the foundation of what it was going to look like as me taking over. And so we were able to really set a good foundation of what the expectations were going to be. There weren't a lot of wholesale changes, but I think with the guys in general, they probably were a little bit uncertain and maybe just need to be reassured of what things were going to look like. So we were really trying to focus on reassuring what the principles and the values and the things that we stood for were. And we left spring really with a great concept of who we want to be known for and what we want to be able to accomplish. And I think we went into the summer really thinking that way. Also, offensively, we were able to get the new system in and really get that under our belt so that when we came back this fall, that would have some recall to it.
Roughly 115 players reported for preseason drills on August 13th, and the Braves have been quite busy since. Give us a progress report on the work your team has put in so far and the things that you've been pleased with.
When we reported, I think guys were really excited, and so they had a great idea of the buy-in and the commitment level, and for the first 10 days here, 12 days here that we've been together, they've been able to really latch on to everything that we've thrown at them. And we had a pretty strenuous camp time working up until school started, and so we were able to get a lot of work done, long days, and they really just kind of kept bouncing back and really just kind of bought into what we're doing and continue to just take daily steps in improving and showing that they can just take the next step as we give it to them.
Who are some of the veterans that you've identified as leaders for the 2014 season, and who are some of the newcomers that have impressed you so far in the preseason and could see some significant playing time for you this fall?
Some of the veteran leaders, probably defensively starting first, since we do have a lot of returners on defense. LJ Stroman come to mind, Mike Lawrence, Dominique Bridges in the secondary. They've all had really good voices and very good impacts as far as setting great examples. At linebacker, Darkus Elliott, Ray Shane Baker, and really Isaac Jacobs has stepped up in a good way there also. Dan Atkins has been a guy that's just been a very solid leader for us ever since he's been here. And then defensive line-wise, there's some veterans up there too. Ed Hopper has actually had a very good fall, and he's committed himself this summer to where he's been able to really influence a lot of guys there. Kadarius Mason is another guy. Offensively speaking, BJ Bunn has done a great job of putting himself in a position where he can back up what he does on the field and his work ethic, and also be able to influence the guys from a vocal standpoint. But our quarterback position obviously needs to have great leadership. Seth Owen has done a great job of stepping in and really taking charge of the offense and really vocalizing what needs to take place there. And then we've got a couple of returners on the offensive line that have been helping out there as well. As far as newcomers, we probably are looking at a couple guys on defense, and then not sure about offense quite yet, but usually the guys up front are a little bit more difficult to determine just because of the size and the strength factor that comes into play. But defensively, in the skill positions, Josh Manns in the defensive secondary, Scott Johnston at linebacker, those two guys have the ability to step in and have a role. We're still evaluating that to see kind of what shakes out. Khalil Vance is a young guy up front defensively that potentially could get some time, but this week will be a pivotal week for us to be able to kind of determine that. Offensively, there's a couple guys that are still working in that mix, but not quite sure what that's going to look like yet.
Describe the difference between this year and last year's team. The Braves lost 24 seniors off last year's squad, but I'm sure there are a lot of positive about this year's team that you want to talk about as well.
Last year we felt like we had really good experience in leadership. We'll have a significant amount of guys that will have had experience. Now the leadership will be something that we continually cultivate in the sense of there are not a lot of guys that have been here as to knowing what it should look like and have been here for 4 or 5 years. So that'll be something that we continue to, try to teach them and coach them through. But I think this year's team really has the potential to come together as a group and gel with a group, knowing that they have to stay together and do some things that will not put ourselves in vulnerable positions. They'll need to be simple and very efficient, and they'll just need to be hungry. They will not be able to rest on what we did last year, and they've got to understand that this is the 2014 team, and they're going to need to basically make their own trademark on what it's going to look like for this year. And that's a question that we've posed to them and challenged them to do when we started this fall.
An old coaching adage reads, the most important game is the next one. So let's talk about Winston-Salem State now. What types of challenges will the Rams present under fellow first-year head coach Keenis Boulware?
They've always had a strong defense, and so he's been their defensive coordinator, and I anticipate that their defense will still be very, very good. They've always had fantastic athletes, and so I anticipate nothing short of that again. And of course, going up in that environment up there at their place, it'll be a challenge, and it'll be very exciting. I think our guys really thrive in that, and so it will be very fun to be able to go up there, but it can also be challenging at the same time. And so of course, adversity hits every game, and so how we respond to that and how we take in all the extracurriculars of that atmosphere will play a big part into how we will play in that game. So they have a very solid program. I expect nothing less, and it'll be another great game for us to be able to show where we're at the first game of the season.
Thank you, Coach, for being on the show with us today, and we look forward to talking with you more this season.
Thank you for having me.
We're going to take our first commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to talk to both soccer coaches, Phil Heinsohn and Lars Anderson, so stay tuned.